Hello, this is Nathan Hale with a video about war hats. Today we're going to be talking about and drawing pictures of cool war hats. I'm here at Hazardous Tales Studios. I've got my helper Lucy, stick your head in. I've got my helper Ashley, who's wearing a war hat. Pretty exciting. So, let's get right to it. Have a seat, you guys. So, if you guys have seen my presentations before, you know that I draw while I talk. We are going to talk about the year 1914. Can you guys see this? I'm drawing on new software, which is neat. You guys can see it on the screen. It's right here on my drawing pad. Hopefully you can see that there too. In 1914, everybody went to war, World War I. France, England, Russia, Germany all went to World War I. Guess what? They all had mustaches. See their mustache. You can't send them to war without their mustaches. So we have our French, our English, our Russians, and our Germans. And in 1914, when World War I broke out 101 years ago, they all went to war, and they went with war hats. The French had a little hat, kind of looked like this. The English had a hat, kind of like a policeman's hat, went like this. The Russians had a hat like this, had a little band. Also a policeman's hat. Now the Germans had the greatest hat in all of history. I love this hat. It goes up. It's got a big slanty thing right here. It's got a huge eagle emblazoned on the front. It's made out of leather. It's got a chin strap, and the best part of all, it has a spike on the top. This helmet was called the Pickelhaube. Greatest helmet of all time with the greatest name of all time, Pickelhaube. I was hoping that it had something to do with pickles, but in my research, I discovered that it has to do with spike, so it means spear. So it means basically spear hat. In 1914, all these guys went to war with basically decorations on their heads. These hats did nothing. They maybe gave you a little shade for your eyes here, a little kept the sun off. The French hat had a terrible design feature. Was the top of it was shaped like a bowl, and it would rain, and it would just fill up with water and then drip on your head all day. And once World War I got started, things got ugly. You guys know that World War I introduced trench warfare. So you would stand in a trench, a hole in the ground, with your decoration on your head. And the Germans would stand in a hole on their side with their Pickelhaube decoration on their head. And behind the lines, engineers and artillerymen would try to shoot artillery shells over and hit the other guys in the head, or get a hole in one and get it right in the trench and kill everybody in there, which happened all the time, and it was a horrible thing. The other side, they would get their artillery guns and they would shoot, try to get your side. The ground in between became riddled with craters. They would put up barbed wire to stop the other guys from getting to their side. The artillery shells would hit the barbed wire and it would explode into crazy shapes. They would hit horses and things out there, and the horses would be laying in no man's land out here, and there would be flies, and there would be pools, and there would be dead things in the pools, and there would be barbed wire, and there would be all this terrible stuff, and they called this place no man's land. You didn't want to go in there. It was a terrible place to be. You wanted to stay safe in your trench, but guess what wasn't safe in the trench? The top of your head. So it became a race to get helmets. So, let's do our guys again here. You remember it? France, England, Russia, Germany. They all still had their mustaches, but after a year in the trenches, they were looking a lot more grizzly. Beards. Hard to shave when you're terrified for your life every day. These guys really started looking scraggly. It was a race to get helmets. Now, helmets weren't new. They had helmets all through the Middle Ages. They had, of course, you know, the knights in the Middle Ages would have these kind of cool, great helm type helmets with the little breathe holes on the side. Oh, these are awesome. Don't you wish these guys went to World War I? Here we go. You got these guys with the, kind of looks like a bird. Cool helmets. Anyway, helmets had been invented, just not, they weren't using them in 1914. So it was a race to get the first helmet. The French were the first ones to get the helmet. The French made kind of a cap helmet. I like this helmet a lot. It was very sleek, had a ridge on the back, kind of like a Roman helmet. Had a little emblem on the front, little ridge right there. Chin strap stayed on nice and tight. This thing was very cool looking, made out of about 6 or 7 pieces of machined steel. It was known as the Adrian Helmet. It was designed by a guy, took a couple of pieces to build, but it was great. The French soldiers had it on their head, and they were super excited to finally have head protection. Who was jealous of the French hat? Look at this poor British guy. He's like, oh, why those hats on? Just protect my little head. So the British made, and I love the way they made this hat. They would take a plate of solid steel and just cut perfect circles out of it. Probably getting behind my little face space back here. So they would have this perfect steel frisbee. And they would take that frisbee and they had a machine that would just smack the bottom of it and just pop the top right out like this. Boing! That was your British helmet. Let's put the British helmet on the guy. Whoop. 2 steps. Cut out a circle, hit it with the mallet, put a chin strap on. I guess the chin strap would be step number 3, and you have the British steel helmet, which was called the Brodie. If you have a hard time remembering these names, just remember Adrian Brodie. Now, here's a special treat. I've got my assistant, Lucy, put the chin strap on. Chin strap. To demonstrate what one of these Brodie helmets looks like. A great librarian friend of mine gave me one. This is an authentic World War I helmet. Look up at the green light. I can't put this thing on my big fat head. I need a small person to put it on because the chin strap has shrunk over the years. But you can see it's just a circle, and the top's been pushed out of it. And then 2 little bolts to hold that strap in. Pretty cool, huh? Here, put it back on. That way, the artillery shells can't get you. Thank you, Lucy. So, what did the Russians get in 1915? They got nothing. They had to wear their same police helmets, or their same police hats. Just these kind of things. The poor Russians, and the Russians were on our side. They were allies with the English and with the French, were so short on gear that they didn't even have rifles. They didn't have the they had hundreds and thousands and millions of soldiers, but not enough gear for them. If you were in a Russian platoon, you would run into battle behind a bunch of guys without guns. The guy in the front would have his rifle, and he would shoot with the rifle until people got him, and then the next person would get the rifle, and when he died, the next person would get the rifle, and when he died, the next person would get the rifle, and then you would get the rifle, which is a horrible way to fight in a war. Poor Russia is still feeling the effects of the terrible things that happened in World War I. What did the Germans wear? Well, they kept wearing that pickle hub. They wore it all the way through until 1916. Let's get a new page here. So, in 1916, the Germans, they waited an entire year. Can you imagine how many people died while they were doing research and development for this new helmet? So it's our German soldier here with this nice big Prussian mustache. They traded in the pickle hub. You know, I love the pickle hub so much. I'm going to draw it one last time with this chin strap and its big eagle emblem. And, of course, the wonderful spike on the top. Had a big circle on the side here, too. They traded it in 2 years in to the war in 1916 for a different style of helmet. Mustache. So, this helmet will probably look fairly familiar to you because it is the helmet that they wore through World War II. World War II. This thing was just so well designed that they just kept it. Now, it had these 2 bolts on the top of it, and you'll always see this if you see World War II footage or even World War I footage after 1916. You will see these helmets, and they have these 2 bolts right here. These bolts were for a big steel plate that the snipers would supposedly wear. It's really rare to see photos of anybody with this plate on, but you will still see these bolts on every German helmet all the way to the end of World War II. This helmet shape was so effective and so successful that with a few little cosmetic changes, it's basically the war helmet that every country uses all through the 20th century and even now into the 21st century. All of this just with hats. When I research one of these books, I have to go through a mountain of books looking for what everything looks like. If you're a writer, you can just say, oh, they went to war and they wore helmets, and then you're done. But if you're an illustrator and you do comic books, you have to know what everything looks like. I bet you're wondering what the Americans wore to World War I, right? Well, the Americans didn't go to World War I clear till the very end in 1918. But let's talk about Americans. Here's what they didn't wear: a mustache. The Americans didn't have mustaches. They could have had mustaches, certainly, but it just wasn't the style in America. So the Americans were a lot like the Russians. When the Americans went to war, we had lots and lots of manpower, but we did not have lots and lots of gear. So they had kind of a belt on a long shirt right here. It had little ammo pouches on it, little suspenders like this. And then I don't know why the Army got rid of these, because these are the greatest pants in history. Oh, look at that. They used to flare out. Oh yeah. How great is that? How come soldiers don't still wear those pants? They're so cool. And they put the little shoes on. At the bottom, your legs are wrapped up like this. And all the American soldiers went to Europe like this. And once they got to Europe, guess what they got? They got one of these Brody helmets from the British. Bing! That is what your American soldier looks like. They called American soldiers doughboys. Wing! That is your doughboy. Now, they didn't bring American guns with them. They were given the British Lee Enfield rifle. The funny thing about these rifles is they were often manufactured in the USA for the British and then sent back to Britain because it was a British gun, and then given back to American soldiers. So they had the British helmet, the British gun. They guess what they used for grenades in basic training? They did not. Many soldiers didn't see a real grenade until they were actually in the combat zone in Europe. In America, in basic training, they were given potatoes, and they would throw potatoes at each other to practice throwing grenades. So, if any of you guys want to learn what it was like to be a World War I soldier in basic training in America, go to your kitchen, get a potato, take a big bite out of it, and throw it at your neighbor's house, and then run and hide so you don't get in trouble. So, there you have it, guys. War hats. War hats. Now, if you've seen this presentation and now I come to your school and end up doing a presentation very similar to it, you have to pretend it's the first time you saw it. Thanks for listening, guys, and we will talk to you later. Enjoy your day.